Welcome back to the second part of our airbrush cleaning tutorial. Now the audio on this one was slightly interrupted by the sound of the compressor, so I'm commentating after the fact. This is the full comprehensive, I guess you call it a disassemble and clean, more of a purge of the airbrush. It's the type of thing I do at the end of a week of heavy use. And we're going to be using some slightly more aggressive cleaning products throughout this process. You can see in the background, I'll explain them as we go. Now I've popped the nozzle cap off. I'm just going to sit that in the cup, and what you're looking to do here is, the way I go about cleaning in this situation is to disassemble, soak. The soak's very important. I'll come to that when we get to it, but you can't soak for too long because these products are aggressive. Leave it to sit there, and it's literally going to be bubbling. We're using a product called Foaming Airbrush Cleaner. It's an aerosol from Premiere. It's very, very effective. Do leave your mask on throughout all cleaning in general, but especially while using these, because when airborne they're particularly aggressive products. So what I've done is to pull the needle back a tiny bit to allow the soaking to go on around the tip of the needle itself. Leave it in the airbrush cup there. You can leave it in your holder if you like. Just be aware that it might drip slightly out the end. That's absolutely fine. And you don't want to leave it there for any more than 10 to 15 minutes. So as you can see, little bits have already started to work their way out of the nozzle of the brush. What I'm going to be doing here is something that I think a lot of people miss out in the cleaning process, and that's to gently agitate the needle backwards and forwards. You can see that it's foaming when it lands on the kitchen towel there, but I'm gently needling it backwards and forwards, and your needle is exactly the right shape for doing this, as long as you don't do it too aggressively, because your nozzle is delicate. You'll pull surprisingly large pieces out of the brush by doing this. You'll get almost grains or flakes of paint, and you wouldn't believe the size of stuff that can actually build up, because it builds up around the edges of the inside of the airbrush, and then agitating this backwards and forwards pushes them out, and they can be far larger than you'd be able to expect. Cleaning the tip of the nozzle and the needle itself just with your fingers, they're nice and tactile. It's a sensitive piece, so rather than using an inanimate object, you may as well use something pliant that you can control, like your fingers. And I'm just going to fish out the nozzle cap that I've left in there now. Now I'm being a bit naughty here. I'd use the back of the airbrush of the needle if I were you for that, just because the tip of it's a bit more delicate. But they've been soaking there for a good 10-15 minutes now, and that's easily enough to work its way with the bubbling of the airbrush cleaner we've got from Media mixed with the foaming airbrush cleaner. That entire thing has been sat there doing its duty for a while now. Another quick clean. So it might seem a little bit weird to be pulling apart the airbrush, then reassembling it, then pulling it apart, then reassembling it, but because of back flushing, which I mentioned in the first video, which is when you put your finger over the tip of the airbrush, or entire palm as I'm doing now, that is the reason for doing that. Obviously if you do that while you've got your needle sticking out, then you will impale yourself, which I do not recommend. So it's been entirely flushed now. It's already looking very shiny, but we can catch anything that's remaining there. I'd recommend using a bit of microfiber cloth. If you just got a bit of toilet roll to hand, it's not a massive deal, but it can leave little fibers behind. So if you're going to be particularly thorough in this, then a microfiber one's great. Anything that we're doing for the inside of the brush, absolutely any product we're using, anything like that, they are all absolutely suitable and perfect for cleaning, doing cosmetic cleans on the outside of the brush as well. So whether it's your nozzle or your cap or little areas where paint can collect, that's absolutely fine. So after reassembling for the back flush, we're going to be disassembling properly now. So I'm just depressurizing here. Some people prefer to use a quick release valve. I've got one at home, they're great. As the name suggests, it's a quick release valve you attach to the bottom of your brush on top of your hose, and you simply pull down on a little clasp there, and it uncatches and leaves the hose pressurized, so you can attach without having to go down to compressor and turn it on or off or depressurize it. So it's been depressurized. I've removed the hose, I've removed the cap, I've removed the little chuck off the back of the needle clasp, and I can get to the nitty-gritty bits of removing that fine level dirt that you wouldn't catch in a casual between colours clean. So paying special attention to the tip of the needle. It's a delicate piece, it's the most important part of the airbrush. You can use products like Vallejo's Flow Improver to dramatically reduce tip drying when you're airbrushing. Really recommended, or Vallejo's Glaze Medium. Anything that retards paint drying time or increases flow is a really good way to stop stuff collecting on the tip of your brush. Tamiya paints are particularly good for just kind of doing that naturally as well. So we've taken out the inner mechanisms of the brush. They're all fairly resilient. You don't have to be overly careful with them. I would recommend not doing this over a sink without a plug in it. I wouldn't do it over a sink anyway. I think it's unhelpful. You're better off doing it at your desk, but some of those small pieces can slip down a plug hole, and you would be surprised at the amount of customers we've had ringing up getting a replacement chuck or spring or nozzle cap because it's gone down and it's been lost in a U-bend, never to return. So just giving everything a little bit of a clean now, using a microfiber cloth or toilet roll, taking out the trigger. Now this is where, as far as the actual feeling and tactile use of a brush goes, this is where a lot of the stickiness or things not feeling smooth or catching will accumulate. So poking down the cleaning brush here, it's a really good brush, this one. It's made not to lose bristles, which is particularly helpful, and you would be surprised at the amount of crud that actually collects. There we go, you see it on the back of my hand in that section of the brush. This is the bit that, if you are doing a deep clean, is probably amongst the most finicky. I'll be using some different products a point later in the video, some resilient cotton buds. Please don't use cosmetic ones, because the ends come off and they lose their fluffy bits down and in the inner workings of your brush very easily. So just give it a blow there to clear out any moisture. If there's any particularly large bits that won't move, you can, as long as you're fairly delicate with it, you can put anything down there that will remove them without any worry of scraping. It's machine tooled metal. It's very resilient. It's around seals, threads, or with tips and needles that you've got to be more delicate. So these are all going to be left to dry, and that's an extremely important step here, because if we're about to put on super lube, so once they've been left to dry, then your lube will actually adhere to the surface. If they are still moist or wet or have cleaner or lubricant from another source on it, then the lube will just slide off and you're not getting the use out of it. So everything's being kind of fine-tuned. I'm making sure that I've caught everything. You could, if you've got another airbrush, you could use that to kind of blast the pieces and dry them if you're feeling a little bit impatient. So these are the steps that it's easy to do with specific products. So I've got Tamiya's cotton buds here, we'll link them in the description. They are really, really pokey. They're very, very dense, and they're kind of in a rigid cone shape with an actual proper point on them, and that point is very, very useful for all the uses that I'm doing now. Threads will pick up a lot of gunk, particularly towards the front of the brush, so I just press it against it with my thumb and then spin the brush around, and it's a really good way to pick up a lot of dirt really fast. Because they're pokey, again, if you're doing cosmetic cleans, you can get them into any areas you want, really. I'm not too worried about stuff on the outside of my brushes. Some people are. They do look lovely when they clean, but mine get messy pretty fast. So again, getting threads, they're perfect for it, and you can use them to kind of pipe clean style the inside of anything as well, without a worry of the head coming off and getting dislodged somewhere, which is what you'd have if you're just using cosmetic ones. Okay, so our pieces are dry now. We're using Super Lube here, which is absolutely amazing. It's the only product of its type I've ever used. Never found a reason to try anything else. It's the one that some Iwata airbrushes actually come with a mini tube of this in their brushes. So chop the end off carefully with an X-Acto or a knife of your choosing. I find this just stops anything that's got a layer of lube on it. It takes longer for paint to accumulate on it, so I'm putting some on the needle, but I am removing pretty much all of it. Again, just twisting between your fingers and then removing against your skin is a really good way to do this. So popping things back together, we've got our trigger here. Now there's a little on the back of most triggers, and on all Iwata ones there is a little indentation, and that's to go on the back of it so it can be pulled back. That's how you work it out, and don't put your needle in back to front. Now flap your little trigger guard to the right angle, pop it in. It feels a bit loose at this stage, but that's fine, it's just not been secured yet. Now I've made the mistake that I make every single time here. Even people making videos make this mistake, it appears. It's very easy to forget to put your spring on before you do things. Lubing up all the threads as we go just keeps things feeling smooth, and towards the front of your brush it actually stops. If you've got your nozzle cap is too dry, then air can actually escape during airbrushing, which fiddles with your pressures and stuff like that. So any threads getting a bit of lube on them both makes things feel smoother and the brush feel like it's new and shiny, but also there are practical ramifications of doing stuff properly. At this stage the needle isn't held in, sorry, the trigger isn't held in by anything because the needle's not in yet, so make sure not to pull it out, because you'll have to undo everything and go back to stage one. Now we're going to be putting the needle here. Carefully do it, press down, make sure the trigger is down, otherwise you'll be ploughing the delicate and important tip of your needle into the wall of the trigger rather than the hollow that's in the middle of it, which the needle passes through. Pop it in, press it and twist it, that's important. You want it to be as flush as it possibly can. Don't press too hard, but a light pressing and twisting will make sure that everything is exactly where it needs to be. That trigger's feeling much better now. You want a smooth action. You want a smooth action up and down also, because if the trigger isn't coming up naturally, then you'll actually end up with pressure being on for longer than your fingers controlled, and that can lead to you overspraying on a model or something like that while it's going. As you mentioned before, a little bit of lube there, just in one place is fine. Screwing on the thread itself will ensure that it's spread all the way around anyway. So here I'm talking about what's already been mentioned, about making sure that you don't get air escaping. One way that you would find out if you had air escaping is when you're back flushing your brush, particularly if you've got foaming cleaner in it, it might actually start blowing bubbles out through the now present gap without lube between your end piece. Done.